In the recent period of time, at both ends of the Eurasian continent, there are definitely clouds of war, and the wind is high and the waves are raging. But at the same time, as a Chinese, there is a feeling of history repeating itself. Why do you say that? We still use the old method, using the method of peeling an onion, to analyze layer by layer. First peel back the first layer, look at the world, what is happening recently. Let's start from the west of Eurasia. Around Russia, NATO is constantly conducting large-scale military exercises, constantly refreshing the largest in history. There are C1s. On May 29th, the Arctic Challenge 2023 military exercise began. 14 countries participated. The U.S. Ford aircraft carrier is dispatched. 150 fighters participated, including fighter jets, early warning planes, transport planes, tanker planes. On the sea, a large number of warships passed through the foggy Arctic waters. What about the air? All kinds of fighter planes flew by. What is more noteworthy is that the exercise area is only 200 kilometers away from the port of Murmansk. We've covered it before, this port is the base of Russia's northern fleet. It is very obvious who it is aimed at. There are terrestrial ones. The name is Saberguard 2023. Also selected on May 29th. Same day as Arctic Challenge 2023. But the location is in Romania. 13 countries participated. There are 1,700 pieces of participating equipment. How do you feel? On the ground, tanks, armored vehicles, and the like rolled up billows of dust and flew past. What about the air? A large number of helicopters flew by. More importantly, a little further past the location of the exercise is Ukraine. It's time for the war zone. Then what? Yesterday, the exercise in the air also started. The name is Air Defender 23. 25 countries participated. Using 10,000 soldiers and 250 aircraft, it is known as the largest air exercise in NATO history. The location is mainly in Germany, but because it is the Air Force, it will cross near the Russian border. The red circle is Kaliningrad. It's Russian territory. What kind of feeling do these exercises give people? In simple terms, it is sea, land, and air. North, central, south. Comprehensive deterrence against Russia. You can see it more clearly in the picture above. Let us look at the east side of the Eurasian continent again. It's also rough. From June 9th, military exercises are also being held. Last picture. Did you see? To the east of the Philippines, in the area called the Philippine Sea, warships are very dense. There is the Reagan aircraft carrier. There is the Nimitz aircraft carrier. There is also the amphibious assault ship United States, which is considered a small aircraft carrier. But these are just the US military. In fact, there is also Japan's Izumo, which was originally just a helicopter carrier. It was changed a while ago and can also take off and land fighter jets, so it is also an aircraft carrier. Coupled with some ships from Canada and France, it became a four-nation exercise. A total of 12,000 soldiers and 12 ships participated. Because the number of aircraft carriers and quasi-aircraft carriers dispatched is relatively large, the Americans are also very proud, so they named this exercise, Multiple Large Deck Activities. How would you describe these exercises? Another picture. Unlike our common maps, it's a bit special, but it allows us to understand the whole situation. After watching it, will there be such a feeling, the Americans are preparing to outflank and fight on two fronts? If you think so, you are wrong. Why? Because this is exactly the impression Americans want to give to the outside world. It's bluffing. Why do you say that? At this point, we can peel off the second layer of onion. Let us look at these exercises in the United States from the east to the west. How much is the actual product and how much water is it? Let's start with our surroundings. As mentioned above, multiple large deck activities exercises are characterized by the fact that there are quite a lot of aircraft carriers and quasi-aircraft carriers. That's in terms of numbers. But if you understand a little deeper, the situation is very different. Let's start one by one. Earlier we talked about. Some time ago, the Reagan aircraft carrier was squatting in Japan for a long time. The Americans refused to say why. How should I say this time? It's considered strong to support the sick body, so come to participate in the exercise. What about the USS Nimitz? I haven't heard of any major problems with it, but this aircraft carrier is really old. It was built in 1968 and launched in 1972. Already aged over 50 years old. In another 2 years, it will be officially decommissioned and then disassembled. What about the USS America amphibious assault ship? The displacement is more than 40,000 tons, which is much smaller. Because the deck is not long enough, only 20 F-35B vertical takeoff and landing fighters can be placed. How to say? All aircraft that engage in vertical takeoff and landing must sacrifice fuel and ammunition capacity. There is nothing wrong with bullying a small country. But if you fight against a big country, I'm afraid it will be very troublesome. What about Japan's Izumo? It is smaller, with a full load displacement of just over 20,000 tons. Not as good as the America. Seeing this, everyone can understand why the location of the exercise is in the Philippine Sea, which is separated from us by the Philippine Islands. Although there are many aircraft carriers, they are either disabled, old, or weak. So it's better to be farther away. After talking about our east side, let's talk about the European side. In fact, it is also quite empty. Why? Just looking at this incident, everything is clear. In the west, the United States has only one aircraft carrier, the Ford. For it, we've done it before, it's also a wrecked aircraft carrier. It has been 6 years since it entered service in 2017, but it has been full of failures. The most troublesome thing is its electromagnetic catapult. We have said before, electromagnetic ejection, if it can be done well, can indeed greatly increase the combat effectiveness of the aircraft carrier. Why? Because of the steam ejection, the aircraft carrier has accumulated steam, and then suddenly throws the aircraft out of the aircraft carrier. The initial acceleration is too high. Not very. What about electromagnetic ejection? It is much more friendly to the pilot, because it pushes the plane out, and the speed increases gradually. There is a process. Anything else? To engage in steam ejection, you have to accumulate steam. When you are in a hurry, the steam will be gone, so it will be difficult. Electromagnetic ejection relies on electricity, which is much more convenient, and the aircraft attendance rate will be much higher. But the problem lies in the matter of electromagnetic ejection. The Ford was not done well. Originally, the indicators it designed would fail once every 4,000 times, but it fails every 500 times. This means that it is easy to lose the chain at a critical moment. Disabled aircraft carriers like the Ford should not have been dispatched, but the Americans don't know what's going on. The old aircraft carriers built 40 to 50 years ago are of good quality and work well. But what about the aircraft carriers built in the last 2 or 30 years? It won't work. Lying down at both ends of the 3 days, a major repair is needed every now and then, at least 2 or 3 years. The results of it? In addition to the old Lianpo of the Nimitz, the semi-disabled Reagan, and the disabled Ford, the Americans now have no aircraft carriers to use. Even if he doesn't want to go, he knows it can't go, so now he can only grit his teeth and let it go. What about other weapons? Pretty much the same. For example, before these exercises, the U.S. Government Accountability Office issued a report, saying, since 2018, the U.S. military has inexplicably lost more than 1 million spare parts of F-35 fighter jets, ranging from bolts, tires, and landing gear. But this kind of thing usually ends here. Why? Because no one dares to investigate the U.S. military. There are precedents for this kind of thing. When Trump was in office, why did he think that the military expenditure in Afghanistan was so large? An audit team was sent to check the accounts, and the result was funny. The plane carrying the audit team crashed. The U.S. military in Afghanistan said, this is what the Taliban did. Afterwards, in the black hole of the U.S. military, no one dared to check its accounts. So what to say? It is already very good to be able to gather so many countries, to be able to gather so many weapons, and to be able to make such a big momentum. Although this kind of exercise, the specific numbers cannot be looked at in detail. For example, Air Defender 23, since it is an Air Force exercise, it depends on the number of flying sorties. The Financial Times has data in this regard, and it said, during the total 12 days of the exercise, the number of flying sorties may exceed 2,000. Compare it with this message. You are practicing together with 25 countries. As a result, you only made up such a few sorties in 12 days. It can only be said that the Americans really take care of the soldiers of these participating countries. But this is not enough. There is something even more funny. Before this exercise, the British suddenly said that they could not even make the barrel. Why? The British said, why was there a factory for making gun barrels before? It is because the soldiers used real guns for training, and after firing 500 guns, the barrels had to be replaced. But in the past few years, static and dynamic simulators have been used for soldiers training guns. How to say it? It's like playing a video game. So it doesn't consume much barrels. There were originally 2 gun barrel factories in the UK, but because there were no orders for a long time, one was closed in 1992 and the other in 2001. The situation in the Ukrainian battlefield was urgent during this period. Only the British thought about it, and they went to see it. The factory had long since disappeared, and even the land used for the factory had been repurposed for other purposes. Seeing this, does anyone think, what did the United States do? If you can't do it yourself, what kind of large-scale military exercises are you going to do to pretend to be a bullshit? If you really think that the United States is a paper tiger and cannot be vulnerable to a single blow, you are wrong again. Why? At this point, we can peel off the third layer of the onion. Seeing the situation in the United States, 2 countries smiled silently. Germany and Japan. 2 countries defeated in World War II. 2 countries that have been kept on a leash by the American dog for over 70 years. 2 countries that are still tightly bound by the enemy country clause in the Charter of the United Nations. Think about it, but what was the reaction of German Chancellor Scholz to the news of the war between Russia and Ukraine? He raised his arms and shouted, "The Russo-Ukrainian war is a turning point of the times." What about Fumio Kishida? How can you pretend to be pitiful and say everywhere, Japan will become the second Ukraine? Then, both of them announced, we want to increase military spending. The action is highly consistent. Why is this so? Because they all feel, a good opportunity has come. Now is the time to break free from your status as a defeated nation. Think about it, from last year to this year, what have Germany and Japan done? For example, Germany obviously needs natural gas, and the BZ No. 2 pipeline has already been built. Why does it stop when Biden calls it? After the BZ pipeline was bombed, it remained silent. Let's talk about Japan. Why is it jumping desperately when Russia and Ukraine are fighting together, and it dances very fiercely? In a while, it is said that it will develop anti-ship missiles. In a while, I will buy Tomahawk cruise missiles. Will we have to cooperate with the United States in a while and impose chip restrictions on us? This is the reason mentioned above. From these recent exercises, we can also see what the Germans and Japanese are thinking. The most obvious example is the Air Defenders 23 held yesterday. As mentioned above, whose exercise is this exercise? NATO. Is Japan a NATO member? No. Is it in Europe? Not here either. But in the 25 countries participating in the Air Defender 23 exercise, there is it. The Japanese Air Self-Defense Force traveled thousands of miles to Germany to participate in this exercise. It is the only Asian country in it. Seeing this, do you feel that Japan's role this time is a bit strange? Let's talk about Germany. Its role in this exercise is also very strange. Why? In this exercise, a total of 250 aircraft were produced. The country with the most planes is actually the United States, more than 100 planes. But who led this exercise? Germany. What does this mean? This is what the United States is preparing to do in Europe, so that Germany has the ability to bring NATO Air Force. Seeing this, some people may find it strange. The United States should go to France for this kind of thing. It is a permanent member of the UN Security Council and has a complete military industry system. How could it find France? This is actually the reason why the United States cannot find France. Let Germany do it, and the United States can still yell at it at a critical moment. You are a defeated country in World War II, you have original sin, and there is an enemy country clause in the United Nations Charter. One can kill you at any time. If France is allowed to do it, its wings will grow stiff and it wants to fly solo. What will the United States do to contain it? Why do you say this? At this point, some people said, this matter sounds quite reasonable, but so far, it is just speculation and there is no real evidence. There is evidence. Because on March 8 this year, in an interview with a German radio station, German Defense Minister Pistorius very suddenly said something very strange. Here's what he put it: for various reasons, the United States may change its priorities and shift its attention from Ukraine to the Indo-Pacific region, so the EU needs to act more coherently. Who can say this tone? Leader of Europe. And it's the one sitting on the leading chair. Then he said something more intriguing: no matter what the circumstances, Europe should be more coordinated to negotiate its own defense policy and take responsibility for itself. Taken together, what do you mean? Two meanings. The first level is, the big brother of the United States, sooner or later, will go to the Indo-Pacific region to deal with China, and it will not leave much power in Europe, so we have to make plans and rely on ourselves. What about another layer? It is, even if you rely on yourself, you have to have a leader. Who can be the leader? Of course I am Germany doing my part. Come here, can you see what the Germans and Japanese want to do? To put it simply, I want to be the overlord of Asia and Europe under the boss of the United States. At this point, we have to peel off the fourth layer of the onion. Will this plan by Germany and Japan be successful? To this place, we can see a smiling face again. Biden's. Regarding the layout of the Eurasian continent, he made such an arrangement. In terms of Europe, relatively speaking, Russia is weaker, so letting Germany take the lead and leading European countries can almost block Russia. What if something really happened? Even if the United States goes on its own, there is still time. What about the Asia Pacific? First try to make South Korea kneel down to Japan, and let Japan lead South Korea to guard the first island chain. What about it? Hiding in the second island chain. After doing this, even if the American aircraft carrier is old, disabled, and weak, at least on both sides of the Eurasian continent, there are younger brothers rushing to the forefront and blocking it. After talking about this, let's upload this picture again. Do you feel more impressed? At this point, can you see the plot of the United States? But does it work? Useless. Another picture. Do you see anything? On the waters of East Asia, as well as Europe, the United States has put almost everything it can now. How to say? Consider heavy defense. However, there is a major disadvantage in doing this: the two ends are too heavy, and the middle is empty. Where is the middle? Middle East. Seeing this, will everyone think of the history of more than 70 years ago? Captain Chang also set up such a formation, but the east end is in Shandong, and the west end is in northern Shaanxi. How was this formation broken? Advance into the Central Plains and leap into the Dabi Mountains. Breakthrough in the middle. Having said that, it can be over, or the old rules, 3 sentences, let's make a summary. The first sentence is, compared with our nation, the history of the United States is still too short. After all, we have lived for thousands of years. What things have we not seen or experienced? The Americans were complacent and thought they had come up with a good solution. How does it know? The formation it is putting out now is that the two ends are heavy and the middle is light, and it is basically exactly the same as when the team leader was defeated in the past. Once the middle is broken, it will lose everything. It's just that now the scope is larger, the scale is wider, and the impact will be far-reaching. Now the United States is gathering troops on the seas of East Asia and Europe and continues to conduct such military exercises. It seems to be lively, but it is really useless. The second sentence is, how is the wheel of history rolling forward? Can you feel it now? To put it simply, it is these 8 words: you come from the east, and I will go west. Did you feel the historical pulse of this period? A summit was held between us and Central Asia, and then, we continued to promote reconciliation among countries in the Middle East. Now it is time for Iran and the Gulf countries to establish a naval alliance. How to say? Even if it is counted from March 10th, it is only a little over 3 months, but the situation in the entire Middle East is definitely changing color, and it is obviously tilted in a direction that is not good for the United States. And a series of critical attacks are enough to make the United States dumbfounded. How to say? What is happening now, even in the entire history of the world, is epic. The third sentence is the one we often say: everyone looks at my official account. Don't just watch the excitement, but also see if there is room for personal development and if there is any information worth noting. The rapidly changing world will bring endless opportunities. There must be some ordinary people who can seize the opportunity during this upheaval and rise up. During the recent period, we can continue to see various news related to this, constantly confirming our judgment above. How the world will go in the future has become more and more clear. Our road from Central Asia to the Middle East, then Turkey, to Europe is still not smooth, and there are still various obstacles, but sooner or later it will become unblocked. It's not smooth now, but there are all kinds of opportunities. It's really smooth, and there are not so many opportunities. Everyone, take good care of it, and it will be about the next 10 years, at most decades. Things can be said quickly or slowly, it depends on whether you often take it to heart and always hold a certain string. If it takes 1 or 2 years, you can't blame you. If you are not ready for more than 10 or decades, then you can't blame others or anything else. How to say? The world is for those who are prepared. Do not miss it. Netizens are very interested in the news published in the past few days about the establishment of the new United Nations headquarters on Haiziazi Island and the planning of southern Tibet in Ili. Some netizens also asked about the large-scale domestic planning. Lao Lu is also a commoner. He planned it based on his personal hobbies. Given that China is a big country, the history and culture of different regions are very different, and due to the current division of territories, it cannot be effectively developed. Although the regional economy is currently improving, the concept of urban agglomeration has also been raised. On the one hand, because administrative divisions cannot be coordinated with each other, on the other hand, excessive concentration in central cities is not conducive to future national defense security. The population loss is serious, and the gap between rich and poor according to the reasons for the formation of history. Lao Lu proposed the system of 3 capitals and 5 capitals, that is, the current Beijing and Nanjing. Xi'an was set up as Chang'an, and the 5 capitals were Wu, Yuxing, in the east and Wu, Yuxing, in the west. The capital is Jin and Han, Hanzhong, the southern capital is Lingnan, Wuzhou, the northern capital is Ming and Qing, Xiangan, and the central capital is Jingchu, Jingzhou. 3 capitals, cities with a high degree of historical and cultural accumulation. In history, Chang'an, Luoyang, Beijing, and Nanjing are both ancient capitals with profound historical culture. Some people may ask whether the current Nanjing can be changed to Tokyo, and Guangzhou can be changed to Nanjing. It can only be said the time is not ripe, and Beijing's status is supreme in the country. If you want to talk about Tokyo, you need to wait until the return of the 4 Japanese islands in a few years. Beijing is the capital, which is understandable, and it is also the core of the current development of Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei. Nanjing is the ancient capital of the 7 dynasties. With the addition of the Republic of China, many southern dynasties have established their capitals in a healthy way in history. It has declined since the Tang dynasty, but Chang'an in history is the largest ancient capital in China, and it is on par with Rome in the world. The 2 greatest ancient capitals in the world, Xi'an is basically connected with Xianyang, the capital of Qin dynasty, and is called Zhejianghao. Not inferior. The level of the 3 capitals is equivalent to the provincial level or slightly higher. The Politburo Standing Committee member concurrently serves as the military and political chief. At the critical moment of the struggle with the United States, he has wartime thinking and lays out a global strategy. The 2 capitals of East and West, ancient and modern, Chinese and foreign, the current urban agglomeration has been formed. The typical ones are the Yangtze River Delta and the Pearl River Delta. The Yangtze River Delta is centered on Shanghai, and Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai developed together. However, it feels that competition is greater than cooperation, and it has formed a siphon to northern Jiangsu and Anhui. Benefit. In fact, this economic area is the Wu area centered on Taihu Lake. The eastern capital can be defined as the capital of Wu, the center of Jiangnan culture. Although the city is small, it has the advantage of guiding the transfer of funds from the east bank of Taihu Lake to the west. The western capital suggested choosing Hanzhong. The strength of Qin in history was of course the reform of Shanyang. Sima Qiu suggested that King Qin Huiban annexed Bashu to truly let Qin to become prosperous and strong. The Chang'an regime in history can go east to unify the world as long as it controls Bashu. Here Hanzhong has a special status. Han Jiaozi relied on Hanzhong to establish a 400-year-old Han foundation. This western capital not only includes Bashu, but also Ganlong. Only by controlling the Hexi corridor can the fortune be prosperous. The 2 capitals of the north and the south unite to resist the United States. The southern capital is located in Wuzhou. Many people may have heard of Wuzhou. In fact, Wuzhou is the birthplace of Lingnan culture. After Qin conquered Baiyu, it was in Wuzhou. Guangdong and Guangxi are two of Wuzhou. Sun, in fact, there is a third sun in Wuzhou, which is Jiaozhai, which is now northern Vietnam, mainly the Red River Delta. The capital of Vietnam, Hanoi, is on the bank of the Red River. At present, the economic development of Lingnan is highly concentrated in the Pearl River Delta, which is not conducive to the development of social economy. Wuzhou can be used to move westward. Nanning, Liuzhou, Kinzhou, Hanoi, and Haiphong should all be the objects of radiation. From Qin and Han dynasties to the northern Song dynasty, Vietnam has been it is a county and county. In the Ming dynasty, it became the chief secretary, provincial level, for a short time. Later, it became independent but remained a vassal. Therefore, Nandu's eyes are not limited to Guangdong and Guangxi, but also Jiaozhai. The reason why the northern capital is called Ming and Qing instead of Yanzhou is that the main consideration is not only Beijing Tianjin Hebei, but also Liaodong, Shandong, and Henan. The Bohai Bay and the Central Plains are closely connected and cannot be separated. Coordinating this huge region with a population of nearly 600 million, Shenyang, Dalian, Beijing, Tianjin, Jinan, Qingdao, Zhengzhou, Shijiazhuang and other cities are blooming everywhere, driving the development of China's core regions. Jingchu, the central capital, connects the four directions. The central region has always been the center of competition, and Wuhan is the area of great battles. In this area, there are important cities such as Wuhan, Changsha, and Nanchang, relying on Poyang Lake, Dongting Lake, Han River, Xiangjiang River. Jiangxijiang developed and was relatively prosperous in history, but it was also the site of the Fourth World War and was often destroyed. If China wants to develop well, Jingchu must be uplifted. It is always a low-lying place that is not conducive to development, and the current attention to Jingchu is not enough. In the past 2 years, it is also because of the high popularity of the Wuhan epidemic. Jingzhou, Xianyang, and Nanyang are located in Jingzhou. The Xiang Basin is a treasure land. It can be said that it has the ability to establish the capital, and the strategy is important. In history, if you defend Xianyang, you will defend the south. Jin Yang's novels even portray Guo Jing guarding Xianyang as a hero. Jingzhou is the birthplace of Chu culture. It is also the hope of Jingzhou to set the government in Jingzhou. You can reach Wuyu along the river, go to the Central Plains in the north, go to Bashu in the west, and go to Lingnan in the south. It is the thoroughfare of 9 provinces. The prosperity of Jingchu leads to the prosperity of China. The 3 capitals and the 5 capitals are just personal opinions. The 5 capitals and the 5 war zones are basically the same. The 3 capitals are important strategic centers and will further realize the overall rise of China.